What's going on, guys? Welcome back, and today I am going to be giving you my thoughts on episodes 4, 5, and 6 of The Bad Batch Season 2. As I did with the first season, I will be covering this show in 3 episode chunks until we reach the end of the season. Now, I don't have nearly as much to say about these episodes as I did about the first 3, or in particular, The Solitary Clone, which remains the best episode of this season so far, in my opinion. But there are still some things that I would like to cover, so without further ado, let's jump right into episode 4, Faster. This episode was okay, in my opinion. Once it ended, I turned to my mom, who I was watching it with, and asked her what she thought of it, and she said, "It was there." And that pretty much sums up my thoughts on this episode. It was a mildly entertaining but forgettable one, where Omega, Tech, and Wrecker partake in a race in order to help out Sid. I've seen a lot of people branding this episode as filler, and while I can understand that, I do feel it sets up some potentially important elements for later in the season. Sid is held for ransom by one of her former colleagues, and we are treated to an interesting conversation between the two, where he tells her that he knows she will turn on the Bad Batch eventually, and she responds by saying, "Maybe I'll surprise you." You can tell that the Bad Batch have changed her and that she has become a better person. She's grateful for what the Batch have done for her, but whether or not she will fall back into her previously morally questionable tendencies remains to be seen. At the end of the episode, this same character tells the Bad Batch to watch their backs because Sid may not always have their best interest at heart. This obviously sets up some sort of conflict between Sid and the Bad Batch, whether it be her reporting them to the Empire or something along those lines. I can sense a betrayal on the horizon. But where this episode fell flat, in my opinion, was that compared to a lot of the quote-unquote filler episodes in Season 1, it offered very little meaningful character development. For example, an episode in Season 1 that got a lot of flack and was called filler by a vast majority of people was Episode 13, Infested. I've already talked about that episode in my Season 1 reviews, so I won't repeat myself, but I actually think that that episode goes a long way in developing the dynamic between the Bad Batch and Sid. We see that not only are they willing to work for her, they're also willing to stick their necks out for her, and she's willing to do the same for them, which is shown by her helping them get Omega out of a bind in the end. It's the turning point in their relationship where they go from associates to friends, at least in some respect. But what does this episode tell us that we didn't already know before? Sid is untrustworthy. Okay, we kind of already knew that. The Bad Batch are willing to help out Sid. We also already knew that. It's just kind of a restatement of things we already knew, which I suppose is not a bad thing, but I do think they could have done more with the characters. A lot of people have been saying it's cool to see Tech get more time in the spotlight, which is true. I like the moment at the end of the episode where after Tech wins the race, the crowd begins cheering him on, and he doesn't really know how to respond to that, so he just gives this kind of awkward salute. I thought that was a very effective moment. Moving on to episode 5, Entombed. This was yet another pretty disposable episode, in my opinion. It's essentially just the team going on a treasure hunt. And the setup of it was kind of nonsensical. This new pirate character, Fee, asks the Bad Batch to help her out on this treasure hunt, but that didn't make a lot of sense to me because she was the one who tasked them with retrieving Count Dooku's war chest from Sereno in the first 2 episodes, and they failed in accomplishing that mission. So why is she now asking for the help of the guys who failed to help her out before? Aside from that, this episode does give us a bit of insight into Hunter's character. While on the treasure hunt, he tells Fee that she's just making things up as she goes along. And since when did he not make things up as he went along? That's kind of the Bad Batch's whole thing. They're very improvisational. But as Hunter said in episode 7 of season 1, their priorities have shifted. He's now more protective of Omega and is less willing to take what he considers to be unnecessary risks. Although Hunter is initially distrusting of Fee, once he sees that she's willing to give up the treasure she came all this way for to serve the greater good, he does go out of his way to save her. And you can tell by the end that he's come to terms with the fact that Omega is going to have different adult influences in her life, and he needs to be accepting of that rather than being a strict, overbearing parent. And of course, I can't go on without mentioning the mysterious mech creature the Bad Batch uncover, which, as many people have pointed out, looks strikingly similar to a piece of technology designed by the Zepho from Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. For a bit of background, the Zepho were an ancient race of Force wielders around long before the time of the Jedi who ultimately went extinct. And there are several things suggesting this mech has some connection to the Zepho. Firstly, Fee tells us that the heart of the mountain, aka the Arkenstone, was designed by the Ancients, who existed long before the Jedi. The head design of the mech, and the fact that it shoots a beam of blue energy, is practically identical to the Tomb Guardians you fight in the tombs of Mictrol and Ilram in Jedi Fallen Order. If this connection to that game was intentional, then I liked it, because it's always nice to see Fallen Order getting validation in other forms of Star Wars media. Episode 6, Tribe, sees the return of Gunji the Wookiee youngling we first met all the way back in Season 5 of the Clone Wars, and in my opinion, this episode got the series back on track after the previous two episodes were a tad bit underwhelming. To start off, I found it quite interesting that Hunter had no qualms about helping Gunji, because as previously stated, he's usually the one unwilling to take unnecessary risks and protests against them helping random people. Later in the episode, when they arrive on Kashyyyk, the Wookiees ask them why they came, and Hunter simply says, because Gunji is a kid and he was in trouble. But I feel as though Hunter's true reason for helping Gunji is a far more personal one. In the very first episode of The Bad Batch, he tried to help Caleb Doom escape from Order 66, and although he did lie to Crosshair to try and throw the Empire off his scent, he undoubtedly thinks he could have done more to help Caleb. So I'm sure he saw a chance at redemption in helping another young Jedi in a similar situation. I also love how this episode shows us, while the Bad Batch do take on morally questionable jobs, they still won't hesitate to do the right thing. At the beginning of this episode, they're pulling off a sketchy exchange of forged chain codes with smuggler droids, but once they realize their clients are trafficking a living being, they do what is morally correct and return Gunji to his people, where they assist the Wookiees in fighting back against their oppressors. While the title Tribe does in many ways refer to the Wookiees, it also refers to the Bad Batch, who are a tribe in their own way. This episode just told a classic story of nature versus technology. The Trandoshans are willing to conform to the standards of the Empire, while the Wookiees stand firm in defense of their culture and beliefs. With the help of the trees and the native spiders of the forest, which look nothing like the ones in Jedi Fallen Order, by the way, they ultimately come out victorious. Another standout aspect of this episode was the score by Kevin Kiner, which is great in the entire show, but it really stood out to me in this particular episode. The music they used for Kashyyyk beautifully conveyed the unique culture of the Wookiees. With all that being said, that's just about it for my thoughts on the most recent 3 episodes of The Bad Batch Season 2. I thought episodes 4 and 5 were just okay, and episode 6 was really good, But before I end things off, I would like to have a quick discussion about filler episodes. Now, a channel that I frequently watch recently uploaded a video going even deeper into this topic than I will, so I'd recommend checking that video out if you would like to. I don't think filler is a problem in a show of this length. As people have rightfully pointed out, the Clone Wars had its fair share of filler as well, and most seasons of that show were over 20 episodes long. Although The Bad Batch is only 16 episodes long, it does have the necessary time to tell its story. Filler is only a problem in an 8-episode show like The Mandalorian, where most episodes do nothing to develop the characters or story, but that's a topic for another video. I guess what I'm trying to say is just because episodes 4 and 5 of The Bad Batch Season 2 were forgettable to me, it doesn't mean I've lost faith in the show overall. If a few episodes of The Bad Batch here and there don't do a lot for the story, then it doesn't mean the quality of the show will be negatively affected in the long run. But you guys let me know. What are your thoughts on episodes 4, 5, and 6 of The Bad Batch Season 2? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Just whatever your thoughts are. Please let me know them all in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.